I'm Charlotte, and this is my husband Ken, and this is my brother Jim.
Hello.
And we're just excited that you came and are interested and want to share in our culture. So please feel free. The copies of the PowerPoint are back there, and some other information. The only thing we ask that you don't take is any of the jewelry or artifacts, which includes.
Yeah, you can't take Jim home either.
You can't take Jim. He's my beloved brother, and or anything on that table. But anything on this table, feel free to take. And then we have a sign-up sheet if you want to know more information after this. We actually we share quite a bit, and it's exciting that we get to do it with you all. And we do a lot of different cultural training, in particular about Pine Ridge.
Yes.
We do it in 4 sessions, so this is like our session 1. Not that we'll continue to do it here unless we're asked. But one of the things I wanted to mention when you're talking about culture, this is a really good document. It's put together by HHS, CDC, and SAMHSA. And what would be really good, it's focused on how you would care for Native Americans in a healthcare setting and also in a disaster. So this is a really good resource. So I wanted to share that as well. So and then there's a few items that if you joined us for the geography fair, you saw that we had babubu bread, which is Indian flatbread, and YG beef, which is a berry soup. So the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to ask Jim to come up and share a few things in Lakota with you. Would you like to do that?
Sure. Matusa much up in family, work family, Wahilo, Lecture Washichu, Tuaka, Wahilo. I came from Pine Ridge, South Dakota to visit St. Louis here, and I enjoyed it very much, and I'm glad to meet everybody that are here, and they treated me very well. So I speak both Native American and Lakota language. Any questions?
How do you say coffee?
We say coffee in Lakota language, we say wakalapi.
So how do you say I want some coffee?
I said wakalapi wachi no.
And
What's a coffee?
that's an important one that we share. We want some
Yeah.
coffee.
Another language that we say good morning to you guys is we say he honey washte no means good morning. So that's how we say good morning in Lakota language. We say toksha, we never say goodbye to anybody anywhere. So we just say toksha means we'll see you again.
See you again. So if you ever hear me, like if I had a phone call, you will always hear me repeat Doksha. So we never say goodbye. So, thank you.
Yep.
All right. I'll ask you to come back in just a minute.
Okay.
Okay. So we'll do a little introductory presentation for you about Native Americans. In particular, we're focusing on Pine Ridge. And so Native Americans, we are the first people here on the American soil. And of course we know reservations happened due to invasion of Western culture. And so our focus is on Native Americans, and there's 6 different regions, and we are in the region of the Plains Indians. So each region had different natural resources, so not all Indians are in canoes, not all Indians whale. A lot of the movies that you've seen, Hidalgo and Dances with Wolves, actually, my brother Jim was in both of those, and you'll see some pictures there. A lot of those movies were made on Pine Ridge, on the reservation there. Each culture group used, they had different needs and different resources. The Plains Indians were very nomadic Indians, And so therefore, they followed the buffalo, where the buffalo went, because that was their primary resource. So I bring that up because so much that happened when they were confined to reservation, taking away that buffalo added to a lot of the problems that they have today. So the Plains Indians, I said they were nomadic, and they traveled with the buffalo. Let's see. So the buffalo being their natural food source and also their natural tools. So everything from the buffalo was used. And you can see from some of the jewelry, a lot of the items were made with encino, which is like the ligament to the buffalo, and they used the hide, the fur, the meat, tools. So everything in the buffalo is used, and still the belief system is that you don't waste anything. And so what happened when the herd was found and there was a buffalo hunt, that's where the powwows were originated. It was a celebration from being able to have all their sources met by the buffalo. So here's just a little bit of history. And again, like I said, we do a lot of education at different locations and stuff like that. And this is like our first education that we do. And so this is what we're sharing with you today. The reservation was created by the Western culture and hunting the buffalo, which is called tatanka. And so they are today on the brink of extinction. We do still see some buffalo that do roam on Pine Ridge. There's not a tremendous amount of them, and they're trying to reintroduce them into Pine Ridge. But what happened when they removed a little coat of food, that broke their cycle of self-sufficiency. And so, but res life today, there's a lot of historical trauma, and there's actually some, I do have a document, and it's the latest research on historical trauma and how that they have found that historical trauma passes down from generation to generation through your DNA markers. It's an incredible research document. And so what happened is just that devaluing of their livelihood. Pine Ridge concentration was basically set up as a concentration camp. Concentration camp 344, right, Ken? Isn't it 344?
334.
334. And so a lot of people will ask questions. We actually derive our education based upon a lot of questions that we get asked. And one of the questions that we often get asked, well, why don't they leave? Why don't, if everything is so, if they're so, they're so poor and there's no economy, which I'll go over, why don't they leave? That is their home. That's a home of the Lakota. And one of the things is when you have been in concentration for so many years, and there's a parallel to prison when you're in concentration. And to reintroduce someone into society is not easy, especially if you were born into it. So it would be similar to, it's even worse than if someone was in our society, in Western culture, and then they did something wrong, and then they went to prison, and then reintroducing them takes quite a bit of transition because everything has been taken away from them as far as freedoms go. So that is not an easy task. And it also takes them away from their home and their community. So
make one distinction on that. When you're born into a certain set of circumstances, it is completely different than what Charlotte was saying, somebody from the Western civilization who's out and free, then going to prison.
Yeah.
This is the culture and life that they grew up in. So they don't know any difference. So it is much different. And to us, it's a very sad situation that the Western culture has put them in. It's not something they've done to themselves.
What we're seeing on Pine Ridge is the focus is definitely shifting to where they're really desiring hope and really desiring a difference and to be self-sufficient. But that is not something that just happens overnight. So this is actually, it's kind of it's the best picture we could get entering Pine Ridge. This is a picture on the left is a picture of the Badlands and then the Oglala Nation flag. The nation of Pine Ridge is,
Like,
yes, the flag is a sovereign nation. So here's a lot on here, and I wanted to put in, it's a little hard to read, but you do have some PowerPoint pictures that you can look at. Sioux. We use Sioux because a lot of people understand the overarching of the Sioux Nation. You've heard it for years. Sioux is a very negative
yeah.
name, and it's not something that we go by. Sioux was actually a name that was given from the French and the Ojibwe, and it means little snake. And so we go by our name, which is
We changed it to Lakota because Sioux was a cut knife for us, so we turned around and changed everything into our name, and we just went by Lakota. That's how we chose it.
So it is one of the most poorest reservations in the United States. It's also one of the largest. It's 2 million acres of a reservation, which is the size of Rhode Island, Delaware, and the District of Columbia. Very large reservation. Only 3%, and again, we answered these based upon a lot of questions that we get. Only 3% of the land is usable cropland, and that comes from the Department of Agriculture, right?
USDA.
USDA.
And if you look at the picture in the background, you can tell that it's very arid, dry, and not designed for growing crops.
Yeah. Unlike many of the other reservations, there's no income from petroleum, casino, and you don't just drive through Pine Ridge. You have to drive to Pine Ridge. Like, you have to be intentional. So the annual per capita income is approximately $4,000 a year. And that is basically, there's the unemployment rate is usually running between 80 and 90%. There's basically no economy there. 70% of the population lives below the federal poverty level, and it's equated, often you'll see reports equating their health statistics and their poverty to Haiti. The tribal government records show about 38,000 Native American. It's about 98% Native American. It is one of the most intact reservations in the nation as far as non-whites. I mean, they haven't been transient and moved about into the Western culture. Geography and location. It's in the southwest corner of South Dakota. You'll see maybe the red mark, that's Pine Ridge. Land of the Black Hills, the Badlands, and the Massacre of Wounded Knee. Maybe you've heard or read, there's a movie, Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee. Could talk about so much more. They're proud people with a rich heritage of descendants of Crazy Horse, Red Cloud, and Red Shirt. The culture is filled with, this is very, very important to the people, the Oglala people, commitment to family. This isn't just words, this is life. Commitment to family, respect, kindness, and very generous people. So this is actually a picture of one of the largest communities on the reservation. And I show it because not to look at the town, but to look outside of it. And this is actually a pocket on the reservation that has more white people than Native Americans. So it actually is more of a town. It's really more population areas. And each population area is about 45 minutes. There's 3 gas stations on the reservation. and it's kind of a triangle of the gas stations. So there's not a lot of resources there either. Health statistics. We're in the healthcare field there. Life expectancy for men is about 48, and for women it's 52. We have some friends that are missionaries in Burkina Faso in Africa, and their life expectancy is running at about 58, right? So their life expectancy is higher in a village in Burkina Faso than it is on Pine Ridge. It's the lowest in the U.S. and the second lowest in the Western Hemisphere, equated to Haiti.
Let me go ahead and interject here.
Okay.
One of the things is, this is a 3.5, 4-hour presentation that we're condensing down to half an hour. But what I did was I looked up some additional statistics that are more applicable to Ranken, Jordan, and pediatrics. Looking at Pine Ridge, and then this is the infant mortality rates, basically. The incidence of SIDS on the reservation is per 100,000 is 149. The average of the U.S. white population is 47.3, so it's more than 3 times the average there. Unintentional injuries for infants is 82 versus 26.9. Homicide, 26 versus 6.3. Pneumonia and influenza, 22 versus 4.7. Digestive and digestive systems disease is 22 versus 5.7. So there's a huge disparity, and all the numbers are very similar. I just highlighted a handful just to give you an idea of what it's like on the reservation versus here. If you go to the Indian Health Services, you may or may not get treatment there depending on whether they have funding. It's not the same as you go to a hospital here, whether you have insurance or not, you will be treated in an emergency situation. It's not the same on the reservation.
Right, right. So when I mentioned the buffalo, it comes full circle here. Putting us on the reservation was like taking our livelihood. Still to this day, there are rations of commodities. You go to Pine Ridge and you pick up your rations of food, just like you did at the beginning. You're going to share a little bit about that. Do you want to do that now, the civil rights?
Oh,
I think that would be a good time. Mm-hmm.
Sure. And we don't have much time left.
I know, we're okay.
Okay. Basically, I think there's also a handout here. It's constitutional rights of Native American Indians. It's something I put out on the internet. And for example, United States, women's rights. In 1920, the 19th Amendment allowed women to vote. It wasn't until 1924 that Native Americans were even considered U.S. citizens. And if you think about that, that's a little bit ironic that the Native Americans weren't even U.S. citizens until 1924. It defies a little bit of logic, and a lot of the history behind it is the same. It wasn't until 1968 that they actually had a right to assemble, have free speech, and free press. That they could actually hire an attorney to defend themselves. They couldn't hire an attorney until 1968 to defend them. So they had to, represent themselves. So this is not things, and if you look through it, you'll see there's a lot of things you haven't read in your history books. So it's important. I just want us to scan over it, but there's a lot of depth and information here, and it's based upon factual information.
Yeah.
So we gave that reference.
So the reason I even wanted to mention that too is because when Native Americans were put on reservation, they weren't allowed to leave the reservation. You weren't allowed to leave. It was concentration camp, and so that there was an oppression from that, and the self-sufficiency was taken away from them because their livelihood. they were created to be very athletic people. Native Americans created to be very athletic, to be able to hunt and run and provide for themselves in a very physical way. And when that was taken away from them, their commodities are the lowest grade of food that you can receive. If we eat green, even a can, which we don't eat much can in the Western world of food anymore, but if we ate a can of Green Giant, the commodities are the leftovers of that. High in sodium, very high in sodium, and very high in sugar.
When Charlotte says leftovers, it's more along the lines of you have grade A type beef, and you have the same thing with fruits and vegetables. There's different qualities. When you have, for example, green beans is a good example. When you have things that don't quite look right, they're seconds. Well, seconds become the commodities. The ends that are cut off with the stems on it become commodities, and they're pushed off onto people.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily healthy.
Right. So I'll let you, you can look at the rest of these statistics, and you can ask questions. We'll have a little time, I think, at the end to ask questions. But you can see why that leads to so many of their health statistics. They don't have the economy to buy. They get the food that is given to them. There's still a lot of oppression in that. So one last slide, and it's only if you want more information. You can. There's a thing there, only if you do, or you can email us if you want more information beyond this. And this is just some of the things that we do when we're at Pine Ridge. The Black Hills, and that's actually a picture of me with the chief, not the current, the previous one, and Jim dancing at the powwow, and Ken working, and we do a backpack program for the kids, and just some of the fun things that we do while we're there.
We're here on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. It's home to the Oglala Lakota people of the plains and people of the buffalo. Prior to Western contact, our people had a strong, sustainable economy that was built around a nomadic lifestyle that was dependent on the buffalo. We lived like that for thousands of years. We built many cultural teachings and traditions around that lifestyle. And it was a very sustainable lifestyle. We were a part of the land. We were a part of everything in life. In the end, the lands were conquered. Indians were forced to live on reservations. Then Indians began being sort of dealt with as a problem. Now, present day, you see reservations, particularly this one at Pine Ridge and some of the surrounding reservations, are some of the poorest places in America. Policies were created that created perpetual poverty in these communities. We're trying to untangle that web.
The fact remains, Native Americans face poverty rates that are higher by far than the national average. And that's more than a statistic, that's a moral call to action. We've got to do better. The Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota, which is one of the poorest parts of the country, and unemployment there is rampant. High rates of disease and violence are often forcing folks to downsize their dreams. These are the challenges that we can only solve together. And that's been our approach to the unique challenges facing Indian country.
Poverty and its repercussions have plagued this reservation for many years. Today, it's endemic and systematic. A struggling local economy, unemployment, food scarcity, poor transportation and education options, and a lack of quality housing and financing all restrict opportunities for growth and progress. In the daily struggle to survive, drug and alcohol abuse are rampant, and suicide an all too frequent occurrence. things have remained unchanged for many years, not only because of financial and regulatory obstacles, but also from a pervasive hopelessness rooted in generations of struggle. It is now time for us to believe in our potential and push for change in a positive direction.
Who's gonna,
We're gonna sing a first song in the Dakota language, which we normally use a buffalo hide to make our drum with, and it has a unique sound, and we use a wood to provide the sound and makes the song good. So we use our drumstick with the leather with the buffalo hide also. We utilize everything on the buffalo that we showed on the script. So right now I'm gonna do a first song for all of you guys, and I think that's an introduction. None? Okay. Thank you.
Got 1 minute left.
does anyone have any questions?
Okay.
I do. When he changed the drumming pattern, is that by his creativity, or is that a tradition that in that particular song?
That particular song is, we call it tradition because when we hit the drum, we keep in time with the drum group, so that's particular timing there.
So it's a historical song that he used, so.
Oh, that
traditional.
was historic.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't catch that. I'm sorry.
So what I'm wearing today is, it's a powwow dress, and it's called a jingle dress. There are many different ways and dances that you can do in the powwow.
Yeah.
And Jim is a grass dancer. And if you saw him at the geography fair, he was wearing one of his powwow regalas. And there are many other different powwow. There's fancy dancers.
Yes.
There's
Traditional.
grass dancers, which is the men. There's a shawl dance, which is the women. I particularly like the jingle dance because it's just a lot of fun, and to see all the women together is just very beautiful, very colorful, very beautiful. Where there's a lot of powwows, but there's a big powwow in Pine Ridge that's the beginning of August that we always go to, and so it's just a beautiful
ceremonies up on Sheep Mountain too.
On Sheep Mountain?
Outside of Cedar?
Yeah, yes. Yeah, their sun dances was just traditional also. So this is the primary time of year for that, the next month and a half.
Spent a fair amount of time up there.
The sun does last for 4 days and 4 nights without food and water. So as the sun does, we pray to God, and we say God in our language is Tukashila. I'm a common man. Come and help me. I'm pitiful and I need your help. So we pray that way, and we ask God to forgive others as we pierce our skin and pull on the ropes, and that's very painful to women that are having pregnancy and have painful with their child. So we convince people that we pray and pierce our skin to see how painful it is for us to, similar to ladies are having childs also.
Did you have a question?
I did. So sounds like there are many needs. Are there programs or how to try to increase the medical access or?
Yeah, we've actually been kind of working on that. Just develop. Right now, there's not a lot. What's incredible is I felt really honored to ask just to share because there's very little that happens on Pine Ridge because a lot of people don't. One, it's harder to get on Pine Ridge, and two, a lot of people just don't know. People don't know. And so there's, as far as a lot of times you'll see overseas medical teams and dental teams that go, and that's not really happening on Pine Ridge, but we do have a sheet if you want to, we can give you more information if you just want to fill out, your name, but there's not a lot of that happening. In fact, there's not, that's one of their barriers to their health care is they're 2 hours away from the next city where they can get proper health care, and that's Rapid City. So, most don't have transportation or have never driven before. So there's a huge, that disparity, that barrier that makes that disparity is because otherwise you have to try to travel to one of the Indian Health Services, which is not the best quality of care if you can get in.
Let me answer it a little different way.
Okay.
We're working on it, and we're in touch with doctors and dentists and physical therapists that have similar likes and interests that see the need and want to be able to reach out and help. That's why Charlotte had mentioned the sign-in sheet.
Yeah.
We didn't want to take up time here discussing that particularly, but we have a ball in motion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What about working on the economy so that they can be employed and what if the land isn't able to be?
It's a really difficult situation, and because, for example, there was a large call company and they established a call center there, and it didn't succeed. The reason why it didn't succeed primarily is for two reasons. One is alcoholism and drug abuse alcoholism by itself is 90%. Add drugs into the mix, it's affecting every single family pretty much on the reservation.
Mm-hmm.
So you have, one thing we didn't talk about is Indian time, and that's when we have a meeting like today, and we're supposed to start at 12:15. We might start on the res at 12:15, or it might be 2 o'clock, or 3 o'clock, or 4 o'clock. It's when everyone gets there is when we would start. So their sense of time is different. So when you have somebody, we have a call center and we need you to start at 8 o'clock. Well, 8 o'clock is kind of fuzzy on a reservation. The other thing is when you graduate from high school, you only have an equivalent of a 5th grade education. A 5th grade education. When you graduate from high school, let's say you go to Oglala Lakota College, you want to take college classes. It takes 3 to 5 years of remedial education to bring them up to speed to be able to read a college textbook. So you're talking about a 5th grade education in a call center and with a different cultural value of time than Western culture has. That didn't mix well. So what we're trying to focus on is, for example, a lot of the bead work that you see back there, those are the type of things Jim makes. So that supports his livelihood. I mean, otherwise he makes a whopping $254 a month. And, that doesn't buy a whole lot of anything these days. So he has to supplement his income. So we feel that for now, things that are traditional, whether it's quilt making or beadwork, making dresses, something that has been done in the past that is historically the culture has been good at doing, is something that we can promote and help them at this point. We have a longer term plan, but that's not for this discussion.
Yeah, and one of the things that we, to bring out is, it's reservation schools. It's not state, city, it's not government schools.
Right.
So they're not getting, you don't get the funding. There's one school that's on that little pocket that is a county school that receives funding, but most of the kids can't even get to that school. So that's one of their barriers is, having adequate teachers, so there's a lot of that groundwork that needs to be worked on to get economy. I mean, I think it'll happen. I think it'll come. But those are some key things that, healthcare systems, proper education, some mental health counseling, things like that, would really help with some of those barriers.
And they had a buffalo herd on the,
Yeah.
so is it big enough to have the migratory buffalo herds and have that as a source of because I know buffalo meat's pretty popular now.
It is, in answer to your question, not at this point. There is a national park nearby, the Black Hills, that is actually beautiful. And the Black Hills is actually what the Lakota believe is sacred, was taken from them after the Fort Laramie Treaty of 1968. The Supreme Court ruled in favor of the Lakota in 1980 and said, yes, it's your land, and we're going to give you $100 million basically for the land. And of course, all this gold was mined out of it, and it's a beautiful territory. And the right thing, which is what the tribe did, was say, we don't care about the money. We don't want the money. We want our sacred ground back, which you said is ours. I mean, the Supreme Court even said it. They said that by treaty, it is the Lakota's land. So
what happened is if you've ever been to Mount Rushmore and Custer Park, any of that area in the Black Hills, beautiful, lush land, which is the land of the Oglala Lakota. And so they were removed from that land to the reservation, which is a dry, arid, can't do a whole lot with land.
Badlands.
What's that?
The Badlands.
The Badlands.
Badlands, right.
The Badlands.
So, is a lot of what you're discussing about access to education, healthcare, legal services, I assume, is it legal? Is that why the schools on the reservation don't have county funding and all that?
That's really a good question. And in general, what has happened is that since the Lakota, their agreement is with the federal government, the state government is removed from the equation. So they would get funding from the federal government directly, rather than from the federal government to the state, to this tribe. That also has an adverse effect where you have for example, if somebody were to get arrested on a drug charge, it immediately escalates from tribal to federal, which is why the federal prisons are disproportionately filled with Native Americans because of that. They lose a buffer in between the local system and the federal system.
Yeah, 100% of the treaties have already been broken. There's
With the Lakota.
with the Lakota. So even though those were the agreements, those have all been broken.
So to take a medical team in, would one need permission from the federal government to do that, or would the tribes themselves, how would that work?
What we are leaning towards at this point is property that is recognized by the state, not on tribal lands, but within the territory of the tribe, so that it would adhere to the state and federal regulations. And we wouldn't have that problem. You would just have to adhere to the state regulations and whatever regulatory authority you would have to go through to make sure that you can work there.
We have access through the tribal government to take teams and do things like that. That's not an issue. Lots of questions.
Well, you
Feel
said,
free to go anytime if you need to.
you said, once you're on the reservation, you're there. Did he have to sneak out?
Oh, no, you can leave now. You can leave now. That's a very good question.
Actually, he did. He snuck away
He
from his
did.
7 sisters.
Yes, to come to be with this sister.
No,
Because I'm the favorite sister, right?
There you are.
Yes.
Does
I
it,
don't know if you discussed this in the beginning, I apologize for coming a little late.
That's okay.
Do you find the Bureau of Indian Affairs to be helpful or harmful or neutral? And the reason I ask is my daughter did Teach for America in New Mexico on the Tahali community.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And she couldn't get books, the kids didn't have books.
Yeah.
She dealt with her class alone
Yeah.
at lots of different ages, but some special ed needs, some mental health needs.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
these kids were not prepared, and she
Not at
had
all.
no mentor.
Right.
There was no one there, to help. And she tried to get like her brightest students to come and look at, there was like a Native American college or prep college right over the border, and
Sure.
she was gonna bring like 4 students
Yeah.
with the parents' permission.
Yeah.
And I said we would pay for them to come and what,
Mhm.
they wouldn't let them.
Right. Right.
So do you
Right.
find the Bureau of Indian Affairs not helpful, or?
Well, I'm not going to address the BIA directly. I'll address the issue a little bit differently. There's a 90% turnover of teachers exactly because of what you're saying.
Right.
Because they don't have a mentor, and they're kind of thrown out there, and then they don't have any support. They don't have the tools they need to succeed teaching the students.
Right.
And so it's you go in as a new graduate, and you're a little bit frustrated because this isn't what I expected. This isn't what I signed up for. So that's part of the answer. The other is the funding that you're encountering there in New Mexico is exactly the same as on Pine Ridge. They just don't get the funding from the federal government to support the school system.
Yeah, it's the same thing too. Once the funding, for example, with healthcare, once the funding is up for the year, it's up. If there's no money, you don't get seen. It doesn't matter if you have a broken foot. It doesn't matter if you have a whatever. You're not. There's nothing. Go home.
Yeah, and that's actually, it's 100% accurate what Charlotte just said, because we have three family members that have run into that. So
Just in
we
this
have
last year, yeah.
we have live examples.
Yeah. So it's yeah.
One of the programs we are
Yeah,
working on is to get books to the students that are more up to date, because a lot of the materials that they have are 60s, 70s, 80s material. So there's nothing current, which is a difficulty. Trying to get computers so that they have the skill sets to do call centers and get higher paying jobs than working, at the minimum wage type jobs. We're also trying to set up a program for the kids, because it's a poverty situation. The kids come to school, and your daughter probably attests to this, on Monday morning, starving and famished because they haven't eaten on the weekend. When we had one of our nephews, he said, we're at the campfire, and he's like, I get fed more than once a day? And because we were feeding him, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and he was just, he didn't know how to deal with having more than one meal a day. I mean, he ate really well. I mean, he got over it real quick. but it was initially, he was in shock because it was a new concept to him. So we're trying to establish a meal program for the kids, a kind of a
weekend, yeah.
weekend backpack,
Yeah.
where they get a
You
backpack
got
of
to pack your
food
food for the weekend.
for them and more for their family, so that they can spread it out and be able to come to school Monday morning not sleepy and tired, but at least semi-alert awake and nourished to be able to learn. So,
There's a lot to think about.
I have two questions.
Okay.
Did you end up getting the 100 million from the government that they were going to give them, number one?
no.
Number two, where is the drugs and alcohol coming in? How is it getting there?
That's a
That's
good
a good
question.
question.
Yeah, I'll answer the second question first.
Okay.
And the second question is dealing with the drugs and alcohol. The alcohol, the reservation is a dry reservation, meaning there's no alcohol allowed on the reservation. However, from right across from Pine Ridge is a little town called White Clay. And White Clay happens... Nebraska, which happens to do over $12 million in sales in alcohol a year. Guess how many people there are in White Clay?
3.
Actually, that's pretty close. It was 12. And one's a pastor and his wife, so I think they probably don't count. But, so you're talking about $12 million with 10 people. So those people probably didn't drink 10, 12, $15 million of alcohol. Just saying. Just wild guess on my part. So that answers that part of the question. On the drugs, the Mexican cartel has come into the reservation and has given away free drugs to mid-20s because they have no, they have no money. It's like, hey, try this out. And so they have been coerced into it unknowingly.
So therefore, that leads to a lot of sex trafficking also on the reservation.
And to answer your first question, no, the Lakota refused the money because they want the land.
Yeah, it's their land.
Yeah.
And that's more value than money.
Yeah. And so to add what I mentioned that report that I have over there, and I'm happy to email it. It's a documented research on historical trauma, and one of the things that I believe comes out of that one too is the reason there's so much historical trauma was the reservation, but when the children were taken from the families and put in boarding schools, basically cut their hair, and when you cut the hair of a Native American, it means they're in the that's their mourning process, and that means family has died. And so all of these children were taken from their families, which you get this shock of trauma because of believing that everyone in their family had died. That's one instance. And then they couldn't speak their language, they couldn't wear their clothing. And then you have the massacre of Wounded Knee. And so there's so much historical trauma that leads to what Eileen was talking about with the drugs and the alcohol, and there's so much pain and trauma that we know with pain and trauma in general. If you get something in hopelessness, you usually go to some form of alcohol or narcotic to try to, sedate that pain. That's a coping mechanism. So it is quite a cycle that we are working on trying to help break.
The quota is called a happy hour for us because a drug does a lot of things for you and makes you very happy. So that's what it's called, happy hour for us. Alcohol also.
Do the children still speak the native language?
A lot of them lost their Lakota language. Maybe 10% of them speak Lakota language.
But they are really working hard on keeping it in the schools. Yeah, in the schools to make sure that the children don't lose their culture or their language. Yeah, they've really been reintroducing that a lot in the reservation schools.
So the big question is, what can we do to help?
Yeah. You can sign up on there, and we can get back with you. There's always a lot of needs, Ken and I, we take mission teams, we do a lot of things on the reservation.
Yeah. For example, this last winter, I used to be a basketball player, believe it or not. And I used to burn out my sneakers, and they'd be flapping in the wind or holes in the bottom. the kids on the reservation, they're standing in 1.5 foot deep snow with these burned out sneakers. They're wearing a windbreaker, okay? They're not upset or anything about it because that's what they're used to. This last winter, we said we want to make a difference in their lives, and we put out a call, which was answered amazingly, for ski boots, winter jackets, ski pants, scarves, cute scarves for the girls, cute hats for the girls, cute mittens and gloves for the girls, and plus we were able to find out what their sizes were and what their individual needs were, and we would get like little games or toys or something that they wanted. For example, one girl wanted green hair dye. And we're like, okay, well it washes out eventually. So we got her green hair dye. When she opened it, and she was just sitting there opening the presents, and she had her hood over her head, and when she opened it, she was like, oh, and then by the end of her opening her presents, the hood was off, and she was smiling, and it's rare to see this particular woman smile, or lady, girl smile.
Yeah, so we've been trying to focus on a lot of different needs. We do backpacks for the kids that go back when they go back to school. So we collect backpacks and school supplies because, you know, that's a part of some of those foundational things of being successful in school that they don't get. You know, just school supplies, and we've been collecting books and quality clothing because it's nothing to be 30 below on the reservation. And it gets really, really cold, and it snows a lot, and a lot of the homes don't have proper heating. You probably saw that. Heating, a lot of them can be boarded up because, you know, they don't have proper heating, insulation, plumbing. No, you know, a lot of them don't have, you know, homes don't have proper plumbing, water. So there are a lot of needs that I know we're trying to address. So, yeah, please, you know, I can get back with you on things that maybe you might be interested in helping with.
Exactly.
And because we do these, when we do education and training about our culture in Pine Ridge, we do it in at least four sessions. So we try to put a lot in 45. Yeah, yeah. If I'm invited to do another session, I'd be happy to. So
on the contact, do you need the email, or do you need phone numbers, or
whatever you want to provide, and your name, please.
Yeah.
And and please feel free to take whatever items at the end of the table that you want to take, or share with friends and family. And we'd be happy to pass information on or come and speak at any other location. You know. Appreciate your time. Any other questions though?
No, thank you very much.
Well, actually, I want to thank everyone for inviting us and just having us here and being able to share about it, because it's really part of our mission to get the word out, because I hadn't heard about it before I had gone to Pine Ridge and started researching it myself. So it's something that you don't hear it in mass media, and it's flying under the radar, and I can't answer the why, but I can tell you that we want to make a difference. And if you want to help us make a difference, that would be wonderful. We would appreciate that.
You can see on one of the photos at the very bottom, on the far right side at the very bottom, you can see Chief to the other side.
There, yeah.
Chief Red Cloud, and you can see it looks like he's lived a long life because he looks identical to my brother, doesn't he?
No, I think Chief Red Cloud looks like Jim.
My twin brother.
Yeah.
And the one on the right is Jim, and that's where what movie were you in there, Jim?
The bottom one.
That's Dances with Wolves, right?
Yes.
Yes. And then the one above that is, and you can see,
Doggo.
yeah, a doggo, and if you want a copy of I can email the trauma. Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah. Historical trauma. That's just the latest research on that. It's really pretty incredible how much research that they've done.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for coming and being interested and asking questions. And
Thank you.
enlightenment.
I was very excited about this.
Yeah.
Very, very
Let us
excited.
know if you would like to be involved or help in any way.
Yeah,
Wopila tanka chicha pelo, taya ya hip pelo, taya moya laka pelo. Thank you very much. You guys did very well talking.
Wopila